Pastor Lumen and I are talking about what's coming up this week in worship. We want to share that with you, but first we're going to talk a little bit about what went on in here last week in worship. We were continuing our journey through the book of Philippians. We got to chapter 2, and Paul gives us the life of Christ, and he really talks about Jesus sacrificing, and we usually think of the sacrifice as being on the cross. But Jesus sacrificed from the moment he came into this world. He set aside his glory, set aside his status to live among us, to do the things that we can't do, live in that perfect life.
Yeah, I gave the example of my son wanting to be a worm when he was a little younger. And just imagine a human becoming a worm and God becoming a person. Wow, how humble Jesus really was.
Exactly. And Paul says it's because of that humility of Christ that we have salvation, and now we become the humble servants, that we can follow the example of Christ. And that's really hard to do because when life is hard and when life doesn't go my way, I oftentimes just collapse into myself, how to protect myself, how to advance myself. I become the center of not just my existence, but then I think I should be the center of everybody's existence. And then Paul comes out and says, no, we should have the attitude of Christ, that of the humble servant. So that was last week, and we're going to continue that journey this coming week.
Yeah, so we continue in our how to live when life is hard, and we're going to be talking about when the end is near. How do we live when the end is near? And we face a lot of ends in our lives. Maybe it's family members or jobs or whatever it is. And Paul helps us see that we're always facing the end, in that we're facing God's goal, the end as the goal of our lives. And Paul is saying, we haven't already received eternal life, in that we're not raised from the dead yet, but we have our eternal life already. We're already taken hold of that for which Christ has already taken hold of us. So some of the things that we can be pondering as we think about the end being near is, how do we live today in light of eternity? How can we focus on God's plan, not just for forever, but for today? So as we prepare our hearts and minds for worship, something for us to think about is how do we live when the end is near, and how do we live today to impact forever?
Yeah, it's interesting. When you know the end, it makes the present a whole lot easier. I remember I was coming home from a trip, and the Packers were playing the Vikings, and I did not want to know what happened because I had taped it. And as I went through the airport, I heard someone say, the Packers won. And, oh my goodness. So I went home and I started to watch it, and Aaron Rodgers threw an interception in the first quarter, and I got all upset, and then I began to chuckle because I thought to myself, but I know how it ends. Why am I getting upset? And I think that's how it is for the Christian life. We know the end, which allows us to live better the present.
Amen.
God's blessings as you worship, and we look forward to seeing you in here.